All right, so let's go ahead and get started for converting our functional component, which is created by default, into a class component. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to remove all the code. And when I save it, then you can see on the right hand side, it's refreshing the page. And now it's saying that, well, we don't even have the app component because obviously I just deleted all the code. So let's go ahead and start building our class-based app component. We'll start by importing React from React. So that's the first thing. We're importing the React framework from the React module or the React package. Then we'll create our class. And now you need to provide the name of the class. And when you provide the name of the class, that will also become the name of the component. So the component that we want to call this is app. So I'm just going to say app. Now, in order to make this as a React component, it has to inherit from the class called component. So we're going to say extends component. And one thing that you will note is that when we extend from component, you'll see that we have now imported the component also. So this, which is between the curly braces, this is called the named import, meaning that there might be some other things that we can import by adding a comma if I want to. And this one is React, which is the default import that we're doing. And it really depends on how they implemented the component code. They may have used like named export and obviously, and over here, this was a default export, which we will cover later on. Okay, so now if I go ahead and save it, I still have to export this app component. If I don't export it, then in the index.js, we are not going to be able to import it. So let's go to app.js and I will say export default. And this is the default export and app component. Now when I save it, you can see on the right hand side, there is an error. And the error is saying that, hey, you need to implement the render function for your component. Your component comes with several different functions. These are called the life cycle function, and one of them is render function. And the render function is the one that is actually required. The whole point of the render function is to provide some sort of a display that can be rendered, that can be displayed on the view, which is your web page in this case. So I do have to return something from inside the render function. So return, and I'm going to return h1, and I will say hello React. And when I save it, you can see that we are now returning the h1, the heading 1, which is simply saying hello React. And this is how we will create our component using class-oriented or class-based components in React. Now, one other thing that you will notice is that if I go ahead and let's say that if I want to return something else also, I want to return another control, and which can be like a button. Okay, so I'll go and return a button, and I would say whatever, click me or something. All right, if I go ahead and save it, now we are getting another error, which is saying that, well, you can't really return two different elements who don't have a common parent. So who is the parent of h1 and button that we created? There is no common parent, right? So in other words, whenever you are trying to return multiple elements, which we're returning two different elements, make sure to wrap them in a single parent. Now that parent can be anything you want. I'm just going to use a div. So here we go, a div. And now it works correctly. So whenever you're working with React, make sure that the elements have a common parent. So now who is the parent of h1? It is the div. And who is the parent of button? Well, you can actually see the parent of button is also div. So they have a common parent, and that is why we are able to return multiple elements and then display it on the screen. So this is how you will create or get started with creating a class-oriented or a class-level component in React.